It's 4:30, so let's get this party started of the Community Resources and Tourism Committee for April 11th, 2023. We'll do call of the roll. Looks like we have everybody here in attendance and in person. First time in a while, so very nice. Are there any public comments? I don't see any public. Did any public comments arrive via email? Melissa?
I'm really sorry about that. There were no public comments that came through.
Moving on to approval of the minutes from our last meeting. Has anybody had a chance to review those? Anyone want to make a motion toward approving the minutes? Supervisor Quinn moves, Supervisor Bjork seconds. Any comment, changes? If none, all approve, say aye. Aye. And passes. Actually, public comment was now, but that doesn't matter. So we're going to move on to the extension staff report. I know that our area extension director is on assignment somewhere. So I don't know if you had any notes or anything that she had wanted to share or anything along those lines.
No, she just said there's no report this week.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we have our written extension updates, which should have been included in your packet that was sent out, and also you have a copy of it in front of you. Does anybody have any comments about some of the extension updates that you have received? And we have a couple of educators here and a number of them also online on Zoom. So there's ample opportunity to ask some questions. Supervisor Bjork. And definitely move the microphone as close to you as possible. Okay, since he has laryngitis for those playing along at home.
Is somebody going to talk about the broadband task force update or just as it's written, or we can
it's here? Okay. Yeah, it's on the agenda for later.
Oh, okay. Read the agenda there. Got it.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on any extension written reports that were submitted? If not, we're going to move on to our educator presentation from the FoodWise team. Sandy.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sandy Tarter, FoodWise coordinator for Dunn, Chippewa, and Eau Claire counties. And joining me, we have our whole staff here tonight. Very excited. So up on the screen, you see Joy Weisner, Eau Claire and Dunn. You see Hillary Roth is new in Chippewa, and Jael Wolf in Eau Claire and Dunn. And so then you get to see Hillary, meet Hillary tonight. So she was hired January 9th. She's doing a fantastic job. Jumped right in, started in the schools. So I think we'll start it off and let her talk about our newest partner is Downsville Elementary. They just became eligible this year, and by eligible, they means their free and reduced lunch rate goes over 50%. So now they're eligible for our programming, and they were very excited to have us come in. So let's start off our report with, and you have the sheet in front of you, gives you just a little outline. We'll start out with Hillary. Would you introduce yourself, and then you can continue on for Downsville.
Great. Thanks so much, Sandy. I'm Hillary Roth. Like Sandy mentioned, I just started in January. I have a background in healthcare. I'm actually a registered nurse. So that knowledge base has served me well in doing these nutrition and healthy habit lessons with all of the kids and adults that I've been working with in this role. So I've really enjoyed getting to know more about Extension and about the various counties that I'm functioning in. So it's been a lot of fun. Like Sandy mentioned, we have started in Downsville. I was there yesterday for our first session in a series of 5. So I'm working with 1st grade, 3rd grade, and 5th grade there in Downsville. Our first week was just kind of getting to know the kids, and I was really assessing kind of what their base knowledge was. So we talked about healthy habits and the 5 food groups yesterday. Now that I know where they're at, we're going to do a deeper dive over the next 4 weeks in more in depth in those healthy food groups according to the My Plate standards set by the USDA. So that's what we're working forward with in Downsville.
Great, thanks. They were very excited. The principal, Keela Drought, she kind of came around, took pictures. They're all, excited. Kids were excited about what we're going to bring. And we said, taste testing next week. They're, eyes lit up. So we're looking forward to that. So next on the list is Bridge to Hope. That was newer for us last year. So Joy and Jael went to Bridge to Hope last fall. We couldn't get in there before that. They have 2 groups. They have the in-house residents, families, and they also have a support group, those that have left living on their own, but they come back for the support group. So we have 2 opportunities there, and I'll let Joy jump in and tell you about that.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for having us tonight. So our partner that we work with at the Bridge to Hope, her name is Jen McDermott. Some of you might know her. And she has been emailing back and forth with us to try to figure out when the best time is for her and her clients for us to come over. So we've got dates for May 24th, 31st, and June 7th set up. And so of those 2 groups that Sandy was speaking about, I'm not for sure which one that we're gonna capture or work with, but the cool thing about Bridge to Hope is that they have a pantry on site, and they've asked us to kind of like use or make our recipes according to what they have in their pantry. So that's one more way that we can teach participants how to stretch their food dollars and how to make nutritious, healthy foods or snacks, whatever it might be. So we're looking forward to that.
Thanks. Next, we're talking about Strong Bodies. So this is a series of either 8 to 12 weeks, twice a week. So we always support the virtual Tuesday, Thursday that, if you remember, Nancy and I started way back when. Every series, it has been accurate that there's been about 30 to 35, 36 Dunn County residents that joined. So we've got a kind of a group following now, and it holds true. I checked, and there's 32 signed up for our current series, which just started in April. And so I'm on the docket to lead that probably 5, 6, 7 times, depending on my schedule. And Joy and Jael have graciously agreed to do the nutrition, all of the nutrition chats. So once a week after the exercise, we invite people to stay on, and then we have a nutrition topic. So Jael, I invite you to share us what you're talking about there.
Hello, everybody. So yeah, as Sandy mentioned, this is a strength training program that we offer virtually for people all ages. And the idea is to teach them how to live stronger, how to live healthier lives by providing knowledge, inspiration, and ongoing support. So part of this knowledge is at the end, we have these nutrition lessons. They are short nutrition lessons, and we just try to share knowledge that is very handy, but also very important for them to learn. So for example, we will be teaching on hydration. A huge portion of our clients are seniors. So we see that hydration is a main issue, like they don't drink enough liquids through the day, especially during winter. We feel like during winter we shouldn't drink enough liquids because we feel cold, but yeah. So that's something that we talk about. Also, options for healthy snacks, how to read food labels. That's really important so they know what they are eating and how they are feeling their bodies. We also talk about the 5 food groups. We also teach them how to use leftovers in a nice, tasty way. And yeah, so Joy and I will be teaching 4 classes during the spring session, 4 during May, and also 4 during June. And yeah, this is a virtual class, so you're welcome to join.
Mm-hmm. We'd love to see you on that class. And we have weights here if you need to borrow any, just saying. Okay. Also, then let's go to, and I might say Margaret is scheduled to do one of our education components, talking about fruit container gardening. So we're excited to have Margaret join us. I have listed here Stout Community Nutrition class. I may have mentioned that we went there last month, I want to say, but from that, we always get lots of volunteers. And so we have had Stout students help us in the summer with Market Match. Some of them come from that, some just shadow us. And we, in the last fall, we had students help us with with helping our chronic disease prevention action team promote diabetes prevention through that team, and also helped us in Chippewa as well with our Food is Medicine project. So next, let's go to future programming. So we're gearing up for Boys and Girls Club summer program, and Joy will share more about that.
Okay, for this Boys and Girls Club summer program, we kind of do a garden-based curriculum called, I just blanked, I think it's Growing Healthy Kids, and we partner with Margaret Murphy, who's on here as well. And so we've got 6 weeks, I believe, set up with the Boys and Girls Club over in Menominee. And Jael and I are going to go there, as well as Hillary. We're going to pull her in for some of the time so that she can see what summer garden program is all about. And we think we're working with 2nd and 4th graders at the Boys and Girls Club. So always fun to do that in the summertime. And we just kind of do, some fun food tasting, foods that would come from the garden, education about plants and growing, and kind of some more healthy habit type, healthy living, healthy choices type things. Thanks.
Yeah, and they're excited. I just got an email today wondering when's Margaret going to come and plant, right, Margaret? You saw that. So they're excited about that. So the next workforce resource, I just called them, and I called all 3 counties. So we're going to do a kind of a combined virtual. We work with the FSET, Food Share Employment Training participants. And you may have seen on our last vote, there was a question about should able-bodied individuals, what was the question, show they're looking for work in order to get their benefits. So that's part of this FSET program. So part of their training, when they get job skills and life skills, and if they go to our classes, they would get some credit, towards life skills. So we're going to do a virtual. They have said that they have had more response on their virtual. So what's what we're going to plan, and we're going to do all 3 counties and invite them in and do maybe a short series. So that'll be in the works late summer, maybe early fall. The WIC at the farmers market, we've always done a couple classes there. That's in the planning. We'll likely get them down. We've got Chippewa plan, so let's get that under Hillary's feet. Get her used to that, and then maybe we can do a Menominee one as well. Stepping Stones Food Pantry. So we don't have any lessons, as you see. The construction is going on, and so they've gone back to drive-by pickups instead of in-house. So we won't be in there doing any programming soon, but we do support them in many ways. Addison and I went there, took a tour, talked to Chris, and they are continuing their culturally relevant food selections. And so they have food separate out for Hispanic, Latinx families, Central and South America. We have a number here, and we see that number rising, and then also their Asian food, so for our Hmong families. So we continue to support that, and we support them by whatever they want. I've had Chris asked to do posters and talk about food safety, or at least get posters for some food safety ideas in their volunteer training. So there's lots of programming going on, but there's also lots of training and professional development. So as you see here, Hillary's got her new colleague training, her extension cohort training that is ongoing. 6 months for the cohort for extension. Probably 4 or 5 months for the FoodWise. I don't know if any of you want to mention anything about your training, but our 10 minutes is probably up. But we all did do the culturally focused nutrition training, and we have more coming up. So in essence, that is helping us to think through all the different cultures and know that there are healthy foods within each. There are healthy ways to prepare foods in each. It's like it used to be the gold standard was the Mediterranean diet, and like the whole world needed to follow the Mediterranean diet. Well, it's not true. Every culture can follow their own specific foods that they're used to, right? It's just a matter of, could we pick better choices? And so that training was kind of identifying in many different cultures what typical foods might be and what are some healthier options within that. So that's ongoing. And let's see here. I'll go down to the chronic disease prevention. So winter fun and done wrapped up. I couldn't get the numbers, but as of December, January, February, I think it was up in the 50 or 60s, but I couldn't get the number that submitted photos to get all those. We had fantastic prizes. The walking program at Historical Society is ongoing. We've had, let's see, December, there were 9, January, 29 individuals, February 24, March 13. So we're supporting that through that Health Done Right Coalition, and is supporting getting people out and active, and not only walking, but it was really also mental health during the winter months, call a friend, share a meal, do a puzzle, that kind of thing was promoted. The diabetes awareness, we were ongoing with that. We have bookmarks that are going to go out in the community to take that pre-diabetes risk assessment. And what's coming up is summer activity passport. So we're talking in all 3 counties again to support that. So there's some identified attractions, I guess, or events or trails, pools, parks, etc. And then we list each. We have just some suggestions for each of the counties, but then we also choose your own adventure. Anything you do, again, take a picture, load it, you'll get great drawing. You'll be entered for drawings. So I think that'll be a tri-county effort as well this year. Even though the winter ones we did on our own, each county did on their own. And I'll touch on market match at the farmers market. So there is $980 left from last year that we can start the match with. Of course, that's not going to go very far. West Cap was able to get a grant for $3,000 for the match. We're hoping they'll give us a little time so that we can start asking for more money. We know we're going to need at least $2,000 to $3,000 more. So right now we're in the thinking of, drafting the letter, getting some of the data in there, and then, thinking where we can get some more funding to carry us out through September. And hopefully we'll have, tables at the market again this year, maybe an extension table or a Health Done Right table that we'll all support. And any questions? Yes. Go for it.
Supervisor Bjork.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sandy, 2 things, and maybe Joy also chime in on this. With what they're doing at the Boys and Girls Clubs would really be interesting if there would be if they could make a poster or display about what are good choices, what are poor choices, and then get it to the Dunn County Fair and get it displayed. Or if the groups with different ethnic foods, what would be in ethnic foods, and make a poster. And I don't think you have to enter it in anything, but it would be, I know they'd be, well, let's put it this way. If they give you a hard time, I'll take care of it. And then,
That's something we definitely could look into.
okay, well, I think it'd be kind of cool because, the Dunn County Fair is just not for rural kids or kids even in 4-H, I mean, it
Sure.
into FFA and the breed associations and I think there was even one club called the something Feeder Pigs Association, and the kids were. But then Sandy, the ag newspapers and ag radio has had a lot of discussion about the farm bill, and we all know, or if we don't know, the fact of the matter is the farm bill is really a food bill, because there aren't enough people in agriculture throughout the country that could, get anything done. So food programs are brought in to bring it in, and farmers produce food, and people need good quality food. Is there anything that you're aware of that they feel threatened and that they might be losing, or something that they would like expanded in the farm bill?
Yeah, I do know. Yep. It's a hot topic right now. And of course, every 5 years this is signed, and it gives the USDA the legislation, the right to go to give money to the FNS Food Nutrition Service. I haven't heard that we're exceptionally concerned about any items. Of course, in over 20 some years, Okay, so the food bill that covers SNAP, which is food share. SNAP Ed, which is our program, food wise, here in Wisconsin. Might be named other things in other states. And then all of the other supported nutrition services. So the schools, the pantry commodities, the WIC, the Head Start, the senior vouchers, et cetera. So I haven't heard if there's any concerns of major cuts. We've never been cut. We've been restricted. We've had our budgets, kind of constricted through that. So we won't know until October 1 and sometimes even after October 1, but that's why we don't have another food wise educator in Dunn County is when we had those major cuts a few years ago and Karen Fritz retired and we were told, nope, we can't rehire that position in Dunn, and that's why our educators are coming over to cover Dunn now. So we have felt the restraint of that. Yeah. But I'm pretty confident we won't be cut out.
Well, that's good.
I think
because-
certain presidents tried to do that and it didn't fly. So I
Wow.
suspect it won't be cut this year.
I think they're gonna spend a lot of money on stuff that flies. Okay, out of here.
Any other questions?
One question I had about Downsville got added because they crossed that 50% barrier. Which schools is Foodwise currently in then? Is it just Menominee and Downsville?
Correct. Yeah, that's so far the only. in
So
Dunn
where
County.
are the other schools at percentage wise, like
Yeah.
Colfax and
Mhm.
Boyceville and
Yeah.
Elk Mound?
Wakanda is close and Colfax, they're like in the 40s, 47. I mean, they're close, but Tiffany Creek in Boyceville used to be above it. Now they've fallen below. And so I just got the DPI stats from Wisconsin Public Instruction. And so it's interesting that we're losing a couple of long-standing schools in Eau Claire.
Hmm.
And I will say that actually Downsville is slipping below again. So what we'll do is next fall, kind of ask them once there's a deadline for families to sign that application for free and reduced lunch. I think mid-October, we'll ask them again, what happened? Did it go up? Did it go down?
Is
So,
there,
yeah.
is that in statute that where that 50% cutoff is? Is that state
No,
statute or
it's
that's
federal.
federal statute?
Yep, that
Okay.
comes to us through our federal guidelines.
Okay.
That's in place. The one caveat that I heard at the state was that there is a new there's a new bill that was enacted that schools may be able to apply for funding if they're in that 40 range. So there is a possibility. And so we're looking at that if these schools that just fall below, but they're close, can they somehow, still allow us to go in there and still get some funding?
Well, because it's a shame because the difference between 40% and 50%, or even 45% is not that much. That's still a lot of kids who are on free and reduced lunch and aren't
Yeah.
getting the benefits of that program,
Yeah.
but
Yep, so
It's
we'll
hard.
watch that closely. And it did happen in Chippewa where a school fell below 50 from, the DPI, the stats I get are, well, from this year or later, they're older. So it's not the current year usually when we start. So it did happen in Chippewa that we asked the school, look at your numbers right now. And they did go above 50, in the spring it was below. So there are some times that happens. So we'll check with our schools that fell below.
any other
Yeah.
questions for Sandy? Not, thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your time. and
Very
attention.
informative.
Thank you.
Thanks, team, for tuning in. Okay, moving on then, we're gonna move on and Chris, glad you could join us on the whirlwind tour of Western Wisconsin that you've been on today. So we're gonna move on and as I mentioned last month, we're gonna add economic development update as like a regular thing. I don't know if we no, we don't have. Well, then perhaps, I don't know if you have anything you can share with us or our representative on the Economic Development Board, either one of you. Chris, I'll start with you.
Okay. So not a lot has changed, although there's been some progress made since last month on our Economic Development Summit. We're looking at now at the first session of about 3 hours at sometime late the last couple weeks of May, and the follow-up 3 hours the first or second week in June. Anyway, we're working on final scheduling with the facilitator from UW Stout. And so that's all falling into place. I think we have a really solid agenda. It's been a really good, the work group that's worked on kind of putting it together is Seth Hudson from UW Stout, and Gary Steen, myself, Steve Jans from Momentum West, and Dan Lytle from CVTC and the GMDC. And we've had some just really good planning conversations about sort of what we wanted to get out of it, whatever. So I'm excited about that because I think it's going to be a really good opportunity to kind of get a not only a read on the current way that economic development looks in Dunn County, but also on some planning for the future. I did meet with Bob, let's see, last week, late last week, and yeah, and he was intending to be here, so I don't know what happened to that, but yeah, I mean, he was continuing to work on several different projects in the area. He did put out a fundraising letter, and had gotten some responses from that. Also had a meeting with one of the banks that in response to that letter who are looking at doing some funding. So I think has taken some efforts to look at expanding, diversifying some of the funding coming forward. I did remind him that we were quickly approaching 2024 budget season. And so if there was a request, it probably needed to come forward now. Yeah, those are the things that come to mind with regard to economic development. I will say, kind of in a related note, one of the things that our planning work group has really talked about is what are things, or the things that are traditionally economic development, business recruitment and expansion, business retention, entrepreneurship, small business development, those types of workforce kinds of things. And then the things that have become really critical economic development things over the last 5 to 10 years, housing, broadband, childcare, etc. And it was interesting being at the Joint Finance public hearing all day today that the number of individuals who spoke with regard to childcare. So apparently in the childcare world, and I kind of knew this, but it was really reinforced today, with some of the federal ARPA money, they've been able to do, and there was a title for the program, but essentially to do enhanced payments to childcare providers. And that's kind of coming to a cliff soon. And so one of the one childcare provider testified that loose numbers, her staff went from making on average about, I want to say $9 an hour to 14 or 15 or 16, somewhere in the mid-teens dollars an hour. But if she were going to sustain that after the end of the funding cycle, she would need to raise her rates from a family of 2 paying $1,600 or $1,700 a month to $2,200 to $2,400 a month.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, there was a lot of testimony about that today. I mean, a fair amount of testimony about that today, and interestingly. So anyway, it's an interesting time to do economic development planning because it's difficult to do recruitment and even retention or expansion, certainly, if you don't have the infrastructure of housing, housing and broadband and things that attract people, and then the childcare to keep people to be able to be in the workforce. So I'm not sure exactly where that's all going to land. It'll be an interesting conversation because I think I mentioned this last month, but at one point in time in the housing study data, at the point in time that we did the housing forums, there were 8 houses for sale in Menominee. So to think about how you attract someone to come and want to live here, even if they had all of the heartfelt desire in the world to live here, they may well not be able to. And so it all very complexly melds together, and it's going to be interesting to try to tease it apart a little bit.
Supervisor Vogel, anything to add?
I was just gonna mention that we did talk about the mission and vision for the corporation, and we almost finished the executive director position description, and we built in that they would come to these meetings quarterly and with very specific measures or information instead of just all the projects, but something very specific.
Okay.
So, and yes, the funding letter did go out, so that was good progress as well.
Excellent. Anybody have any other comments about economic development before we move on? If not, let's move on to communications and back to Chris. I missed our last update last Thursday because I was driving to Madison at the time and was going to be too tough to jump on Zoom. So,
Okay.
but we've really gotten some great results. Boy, Dunn
we
County
have.
in the news.
It has been, there's certain things that happen in your work life that are just really invigorating. And I think I would say literally for all of us, for Dan, for Krista, for Doug, for myself, it's just, I think everybody's just been really excited about the momentum that's been developed over the last 4 months by really making a concerted effort around communication. Doug said he's just having a blast writing for us. Krista said, I hope I'm not giving up too much information, but Krista said one day it's made her like really reinvested and excited about her work. Dan is just an awesome partner in terms of brainstorming and problem solving, and he sees the holes where we need to sort of plug things in, and so it's been really, really fun. So yes, Doug and Greg Quinn got a lot of mileage out of the work that they did with regard to a press release on the PACT Act funding and the expansion of the presumptive eligibility categories for veterans who had served in the Gulf, or really anywhere, but in the Gulf. And then that got picked up by a number of print media sources, but then also WEAU. And then if you caught, we sent it out to the supervisors in the county. But last week, I believe, Greg did an interview with Judy Clark on WEAU in the morning, which really has a very nice broad reach, not only for Dunn County, but also for just the region, because veteran services are in every county. So that was really good. And sorry that I fully intended to be back in my office by mid-afternoon this afternoon, so I wasn't, but I do have the notes of things that we're focused on for the month of April. We are doing, so Doug is just finished up putting together, working with Krista on a very specific communication about our specific efforts around communication. So really just like sort of stating the obvious, but hey, this is a priority for Dunn County, and we want to be able to be better about getting information out and highlighting the things that you need to know. And so he's got something we've got something going out on that. It is the 15th anniversary of the Criminal Justice Collaborating Council. And so he's going to work with Sarah Benedict on putting together something for that for probably the first week in May, because that's actually in May. Carrie Anderson, who is a manager in the Department of Human Services in the Family and Children Services section, did a presentation for the last Health and Human Services Board about some changes in youth justice programming and some of the great results that have come out of that. And someone suggested that would be a great piece to do something about. So he's going to work with Carrie on that. He's going to work with Dustin on putting out some information regarding the redo of County B from, Love? What's that?
It's Badger.
Badger Drive, okay. Badger Drive to County BB. Which
Used to be
appear,
called Gopher Road.
all right, well, I think all of B is called Gopher Road now, actually.
Yes.
But, so they're gonna put out something here very shortly about the redo of that this summer. And then, Gary Steen asked if, Doug would work with, Scott Rogers from the Rail Commission to do a short sort of, preemptive, starting to get word out about the work around the potential for passenger rail service. So a full slate for the month of, April.
Fabulous. Any questions, comments for Chris about communications?
And I know Krista's working on some video projects as well. Dan, do you know what those are?
Dan, you may as well come up because you're up next. So join us around the table.
Yeah, Krista's working on a video about the Public Safety Telecommunications Week. So highlighting our telecommunicators in the 911 center. And also doing some video around highway. And I think that's going to also be focused on County B work. So we'll get some video out about that. And then, well, the video of Chris. So
Oh, the county manager video
the
is
county
coming up.
manager video will be.
Did she get her
recorded.
new tripod?
I don't know. I'd have to look.
Okay. Send her some recommendations on something a little bit more stable than the wobbly thing she had been using.
Yes. I approved it. I just don't know the status of.
Okay.
of delivery.
Right.
So.
Anything else on communications before we move on to broadband?
I would just say one other thing. Again, if anyone has a topic area, they're sort of starting to come in where people are aware that we're doing things and they're thinking about, like the suggestion about Carrie Anderson and the suggestion about passenger rail. Those kind of came from outside, and those are those kind of nice organic piece that is nice to not have to just sit and try to think up what the next topic's going to be, because as Doug has pointed out, over the year, it's going to become a little harder
Yeah.
as we pick all of the.
Well, here's one that I know Supervisor Bjork would approve of, which would be talking about way ahead of time about the fair. And you could do something on that would not just talk about what's going on now, but even the history of the fair in Dunn County a little bit, and then get into some of the things that are happening in the fair and how people can be involved in it. It's not just 4-H, it's also, they do have the adult like submissions and exhibits and all that kind of stuff. So that's a possibility, and
Absolutely.
doing it
That's a
ahead of
good one.
time.
Started a cooperation between 4-H and the Dunn County Historical Society to cover the history of the fair. At the fair, there was gonna be a booth with like the board members there for the Historical Society. We're gonna help put together, we were gonna interview some of the old timers in 4-H and their memories, and some of them had pictures from their parents and grandparents. But the Historical Society has a pile of physical stuff that might be really fun to show off in a video setting.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be interesting. That would be my suggestion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
also why people do come to the fair, and I think I'm correct in saying that I think the Red Cedar Racing Association is also celebrating 50 years.
Yeah, I just saw something about them having some anniversary coming up. That'd be excellent too. Okay. So let's move on to the next topic, which is our broadband discussion. And wanted Dan to participate because he's been instrumental in getting the broadband task force created. So why don't you kind of share with us where we're at and how that's progressing?
Yeah, so as I've dove into this broadband stuff, turns out you can do a broadband webinar like every day if you want to. So Plenty of opportunities out there. So I spent the last couple of weeks trying to get together a group for the task force and reaching out to people. So I think we have that in place. Well, I shouldn't say I'm still working on somebody to represent the agricultural world. So it gets to be a slow process. You ask somebody and you kind of got to wait for that answer. And if they say no, then you got to start that process all over again. But
Sure.
so I know there's a lot of people out there that are advocating, but I'm kind of targeting a specific area in the county as it relates to that, because we have a lot of representation from another specific area in the county. So I'm really trying to expand that membership out so it's more diverse as geographically. So we have all but that one member together, and we are scheduled for Thursday at 2:00
Right.
in this, well, technically in this room, although I believe we're going to have a lot of Zoom participations, but it will be a public meeting, so the public can be here. So we will have this space available for that. So the main work to get started on that is going to be related to the BEAD planning grant that we haven't yet applied for it, but we said we would take. So well, there's a step to the process where I actually have to formally apply for the money that's already been allotted to us. So that has to be done by May 1st. So I'll take care of that. But they released a week or so ago the actual requirements of the grant. So what those deliverables are. There's about 5 deliverables that we have by June 19th, which is to get together a group for planning. So on Thursday, we will have checked that box. And then we need to do some vision goals, and do some investigation into identifying some barriers and opportunities for broadband in Dunn County, as well as identifying how we're going to, in general, how we're going to spend the money. It's $18,337.40. So and they did get all 72 counties, and I believe it was 11 tribes had applied for that grant. So I know the PSC and our UW Extension partners are very happy with the number of people that had applied there. So so that's what we need to do in order to essentially qualify to use that money is those 5 deliverables. We actually have until May of 2025 to spend the money. So that June 19 deliverable is really related to getting some planning information to the Public Service Commission so that they can put together the state's 5-year broadband plan as they apply to the federal government for the bipartisan infrastructure law funds. So the BEAD funds that essentially are part of that plan. So the state has to put together a plan. In order to do their plan, they need local feedback. So that's what we are doing right now, is providing that local information so that they can apply to that next level. So the plan of the group or of the task force is to really kind of part of it is to meet the requirements of that grant, but I think bigger than that is to come up with an actual plan for Dunn County, right? So what is it that we are going to do in order to meet, well, to define what we want it to look like in the end, and then how we're going to get there. So that's kind of going to be the work of that group, and what we'll get started on Thursday. So I've been putting together a presentation with some of the history and all of that so that our members are aware of it, and we can, well, there'll be I assume we'll record the meeting, but I can provide that to you as well if you're interested.
Or stop by.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions about the task force and BEAD planning and how that's kind of going to be moving forward? Like I said, the inaugural meeting, as Dan said, will be in just a couple days here. So you're welcome to tune in or be physically here if you would like to kind of participate in that. So. Yes.
I'm wondering, Dan, is there talk about how to secure funding for some of the subsidies to low income folks? Is that part of the task force job or?
So a part of the plan, as we look at a broadband plan, I know they've heard it talked about, there's like three legs to it, right? And so that's access, affordability, and then adoption, right? Whether people actually, you can have fiber sitting at your door, but you just don't like that internet. So, right. So how do you overcome that, or how do you use it? So the specific funding that you hear a lot about is about access, right? And that's getting the fiber to the door, right? Because it somewhat has to start there. But those other two areas are also very important, right? A provider isn't interested in putting fiber at somebody's door that's not going to use it because they're not going to make any money, right? And then that also then raises costs, and you have those same sorts of issues. So as we develop a plan for Dunn County, all of those things will play a part, right? How do we get fiber to that? How do we assist people with getting some sort of assistance to be able to pay that network bill, and then how do we provide training or other resources in order to help with adoption? So that'll all be a part of the bill. The BEAD funding, there's a lot of acronyms. The specific BEAD funding, or a lot of that we talk about, is really about getting that fiber to the door. And that's where the PSC will play a role. There is a separate set of funding that's a part of the bill, which is the bipartisan infrastructure law. That is the Digital Equity Act, which that's what UW Extension and Chris Stark is specifically working on building the plan to apply to the federal government for those specific funds, which are more about, once again, that digital equity is going to get more into that. And I know UW Extension also has a survey out. I'm looking at UW Extension people. I know they have a survey out as well about affordability and ability to pay type resources that all kind of fit back into this bill funding. But the BEAD portion of it is more hard infrastructure. But as we develop a plan, we need to think of all of those things.
So as the BEAD task force goes forward, that particular part of the knot that we have to unravel, affordability piece, is not going to be there's not the task force that's going to focus on that.
We will, because when we develop a plan, the broadband plan for Dunn County, it's going to say, what are we going to do in order to do that?
So I noticed that Eau Claire has gotten a grant from, I think, was it the United Way, to do a fairly large outreach effort to people. And I don't know whether that's the model that counties are following, but just thinking about the composition of the committee, at some point it might make, unless you thought about this already, it might make sense to have somebody from, say, West Cap or something like that deals with services that community.
Yep,
as part of it.
Yeah, and I do want to, as we put together membership, right? It was this balance of how do you represent all of these different areas and not have a group that's too big. And so, and that is where, as kind of look at that, like this task force is really about building that first set of the plan. And that plan could very well have a recommendation to say, you should create a committee that includes all of these different things in order to kind of manage this from the long term. And yeah, I know that what Eau Claire County and Chippewa County, I believe, are working together on that, with that, with those projects. And I have a meeting scheduled with some people about that, where they're going to kind of give us that, read us in on that. So, yeah, so like I said, there's a webinar, and you shared one of them with me, so I spent my right, I spent my drive on Friday to Milwaukee. Oh, it's a great way to spend a drive, is just listening to a webinar. So
Very true.
so yep.
Anybody else have questions or comments for Dan? Supervisor Vogel?
Thank you. I don't know if, I'm sure you don't have an answer, but how do we wrap the ISPs in? And kind of so that they're on board with our plan, because we could come up with a plan, but if they say, well, we're not gonna put fiber in those areas, then what do we do?
So a lot of the talk that we've heard from the PSC and UW Extension, there's a very blurred line as between those two agencies as it relates to these grants. We really want to, and kind of what the goal here is let's look at it from a county and look what we feel is important, right? And then once we kind of have an idea or an understanding where we are, then we can bring in those partners to kind of to work with us. There's great partnerships that have happened with the service providers in Dunn County. And I think what we're really looking at is what it is right now. They come to us and say, hey, we want to build this. You want to give us some money? But what we don't know is, okay, you're serving these people, but who are you missing? Who's on the other side of that road? Right. And do they already have something? So that's kind of some of the information that we're trying to get, is to know when they come in and say, hey, we want to serve this area. You know what? I could be on board with that if you maybe add a quarter mile this way, right? Or something like that. So that's kind of where we're trying to work with. I think we have good relationships with them, and they've been good partners, but they also are running businesses. And as we look at the funding, and the BEAD funding specifically calls out a lower match number than a lot of other federal funds have had. And ultimately that's because we're trying to get those, well, not the low hanging fruit, the fruit on the top of the tree, right? The one that isn't necessarily something that a provider wants to do, right? And so that's where we're trying to identify where those are and saying, yeah, this is where the county feels it's important that we take these extra funds to do that, because you can provide internet in downtown Menominee and make your money back, but that 2-mile township road to one resident is not a good one. So that's a lot of the work, is to do that mapping, is to reach out to people and just have them tell you, I don't have internet over here, but my neighbor does. Because we don't have maps that say that.
And I think, to reiterate your point, some of the power, in a sense, of the task force will be, once that mapping's done and you see where the holes are, to be able to say, the county will consider funding of this to match if you're willing to serve this as well, to kind of hold some carrots or some leverage towards trying to get to some of those areas that might not be served otherwise.
And that can happen in the opposite direction, where we just look at a spot on a map and say, hey, providers, this is an area we want covered. Who wants it? Right? Because the county is behind this and a grant, and we will help support that. And the Public Service Commission greatly values public-private partnership in their application process. And so that's kind of our leverage in that situation. But like I said, there's great examples, Otter Creek being one that had a great partnership with a provider and got a lot of that township, or all of it, covered. So it's just a matter of working together with them and getting it done.
Any other comments, questions for Dan? Nope. Excellent. See you in a couple days. that's all I had for the broadband discussion. Mainly was just about the task force, unless anybody else had anything they wanted to bring up in regards to broadband at all. If not, going to move on to, want to make sure that we add Dunn County Tourism to our agenda and have at least a brief discussion or some input on it. I realized that the email I sent out earlier this week said Thursday afternoon for the that the Menominee Tourism Gathering. It's actually Wednesday. That's why I didn't send it to you, because you can't go, because there's an executive committee meeting. And I didn't send it to Chris either, because she can't go, because it's an executive committee meeting. So if I'm just letting you guys know, I've gone to it in the past. And you may just find it valuable just because you're operating a bookstore. Yeah, so it'll be nice. It was really helpful to the last time I went to it, which was either a year ago or 2 years ago. But that is tomorrow from 3:30 to 5 at Bill's Distributing is where that is located. So right now, that's all I have for tourism.
So if I could co-op someone who might be willing to go and gather some information, would that be advisable?
Yeah. There's a sign up form. If you're volunteering, Dan has a lot of things on his plate.
I know, I was just more thinking about he's has such good perceptions that I think that if he could hear the conversation, he'd be a great sort of relator back of if there was something that we
I
could do to
will
come out of that.
forward the invite to the two of you, and you can wrestle to see who goes. But if there is somebody else who goes from the county,
If I could find somebody,
that it would probably be helpful to have someone else there. So
30 to 5 at where?
it is at Bill's Distributing. And there's like a sign up vent. So I don't think there's snacks and beverages. So that's always a big plus. And it said, feel free to bring a few guests. So guests are more than welcome. No actions to be considered by this committee. Our next meeting date is Tuesday, May 9th. Are there any other announcements that anybody would wish to make before we adjourn? If not, this meeting is adjourned.